Thank you for taking the time this evening to log on and join this Farm Advisory Service webinar on the value of provenance marketing for your farm business. My name is Stara. I'm a food and enterprise consultant, and I'm part of the food and footprint team at SAC Consulting, and I'll be your host today. And we have a really fantastic session lined up today with Kim Grant, Anya Bach, and Carrie Ritchie, who will be sharing their insights on provenance marketing trends, storytelling, and business strategy. And before we dive in, I'll just go over some quick housekeeping to make sure that we get the most out of today's event. So as I just mentioned, the webinar is being recorded. So if you miss anything or want to revisit the content later, we'll be sending this out to everybody. And just so that everybody knows, we're only recording the presentation and not the Q&A session afterwards. If you have any questions while the presentations are going on, if you could please hold them and keep them to the end, that would be the best, or you can write them in the question and answer box as well, and then we'll try to address them at the end. Similarly, if you experience any technical difficulties throughout, please just write it in the chat and I can try to help you. And while the speakers are presenting, if you could just keep your microphones muted to avoid any disturbances, that would be amazing. So I'm going to introduce our speakers today. So first we have Kim Grant, who's a Scottish creative director and the founder of Rural Studio, which is a content-focused creative studio specializing in branding, marketing, and visual storytelling for rural businesses. With over 10 years of experience in content and communications, Kim has worked extensively with brands in travel, lifestyle, and hospitality, helping to elevate their unique stories. And she is also the author of Wild Guide Scotland, a travel guidebook that showcases Scotland's hidden natural sites, local food, and nature-based accommodation. Secondly, we'll have Anya Bach, who's the director of Great Glen Charcuterie, which is a family-run business that she and her husband, Jan Jacob, founded in 2003. Located in the Scottish Highlands, Great Glen Charcuterie is dedicated to producing premium charcuterie from sustainably sourced wild venison, a distinctive product they proudly distribute to independent retailers and food service businesses throughout the UK. And as the head of marketing and sales, Anya is passionate about sharing the unique story of Great Glen Charcuterie, building the brand through engaging social media and fostering strong relationships with their customers. And finally, we have Carrie Ritchie, who has 40 years experience working in management and marketing in the UK's food and drink supply chain, and has a wealth of experience when it comes to working with small and micro businesses, both new and established. Recently, her work has focused on local food and drink, food tourism, rural enterprise, and delivering a weekend school for the next generation of entrepreneurs in Scotland's food and drink and rural sector called Thrive. And throughout her work, she has come to know that sustainable sourcing and provenance is becoming more critical to brand success. If not, I will let Kim share her screen and kick us off.
Great. Thank you. Well, yeah, hi everyone. Really nice to be here. Thank you for having me. My name's Kim and I run Rural Studio, which is a small creative studio based in Perthshire. And I work with mainly rural businesses up here in Scotland, but some further afield as well. So yeah, really nice to be here, and I'm going to kind of talk through a few of these things tonight, which I suppose relate to the work that I do through the studio and farming and food provenance. So yeah, I'll just get started. So I've already had an introduction to the studio, but just to kind of summarize, yeah, I've had the studio for about 2.5 years now, and really I work with all sorts of businesses up here, but I'd say 90% of them are in Scotland, and almost all of them have some connection with either nature, food, or outdoor lifestyle. So the work that I do kind of spans everything from web design to visual storytelling, marketing strategies, and kind of ongoing content for a few different businesses as well. So it's quite a mix. And yeah, these are a few of the kinds of people that I worked for over the last couple of years up here. So yeah, as I said, all of them really have a connection to the outdoors. And while none of them are farms in the traditional sense, there are some that have a connection to farming. from an example is Gardswell Farm here in Perthshire. They are a smaller grassland farm. However, they've got a rural wedding venue and accommodation, and they also host events, workshops, and other things. So I helped them build a new website, and I've done some kind of ongoing marketing for them, and worked with their founder on various other small content initiatives. On the other end of the scale, I do some work for Scotland's biggest landowner, Wildland, who have many estates in the Highlands. So a very different thing, but it's been really interesting experience working with them as well. And although they're kind of known more for their rewilding efforts and hospitality, they do own some farms up there as well. So I've worked quite a bit with them on the connections between the food and farming and what they offer in their different accommodations. Also some kind of producers in Scotland. So obviously you'll hear from Anya later, but I've got to work with lovely Anya lots over the last couple of years, also creating their website for Great Glen Charcuterie. And yeah, similarly, Digger Cider, so small cider producer here in Perthshire. Also Highland Life, who have an estate up in Rannoch and accommodation there. Also a small herd of ling cattle, so they produce their own wonderful beef. And then I have to mention my partner's hotel. It's a small hotel locally, but they have their own kitchen garden and growing operation there. So been quite involved in some content initiatives for that too. So yeah, I suppose I'm not a farmer, but I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the kind of work that I do and your farm and why it can really be utilised as a unique marketing tool. There's sort of two main reasons I think today why this kind of stands more than ever. And the first is that authenticity really sells, and people are obviously more and more curious and interested about where their food comes from and the origins of what it is that they're eating. So there's a real importance in these food stories, and people are seeking that kind of connection to where their food is grown, reared, how it's processed, and where it ends up. As well as that, there's kind of these unique stories about the history and landscape of the farms in Scotland. So there's a lot to look at, and I feel like in Scotland we're very lucky that not only are we based in such a beautiful place, but we're kind of known globally as a quality kind of producer as well of many different foods. The other thing is, yeah, the differentiation in the market. So unlike some of the really large scale producers that we might see across the rest of the world, we've got some lovely small scale producers here in Scotland. So unlike the bigger ones, we can offer more personal insights into local farming practices, more traditional methods of farming, and also look at kind of those rich family stories and connections to the land here in Scotland. And yeah, that preservation of Scottish countryside heritage is something I'm very passionate about, and I suppose is one of the kind of things that connects a lot of the different projects that I work across, whether it's food, travel, all of it really. So yeah, in terms of marketing a farm, the main thing that it always comes back to for me is the storytelling element and the power of narrative. So you might wonder why your story matters or how does your farm stand out. But I think every farm and each farmer has a unique story to tell. Again, that might be to do with the heritage of your specific farm and the family that owns it or runs it, or it's your family. Those farming practices, or more recently, some of the sustainability efforts as well. So yeah, sharing any of these things, I think, just helps kind of build that connection between consumers and your brand or your farm. So it's always a good thing to do, I think, when you can find the time, of course. And then how do you tell your story? So I think this is an obvious one, but we're quite lucky today. It's much easier than ever to do this with all of the free tools that are out there. So social media, obviously, that's the biggest and most widely used one, but all the platforms like Instagram, Facebook, even YouTube, they're ready to use, and you don't have to pay for those, and they can allow you to share aspects of your daily life on the farm, the successes, traditions, and even the challenges. I think something that's quite important for me is not always just showing the shiny good side of everything on social media, but the real life ups and downs of whatever it is that you do. So social media is quite good for in allowing us to do that. Also, people really love to see behind the scenes insights, love it or hate it. There's lots of shows about farming out there. I'm not going to name them because there's one person in particular I don't like, but those shows are, so popular, and they've been hugely successful. And I think that's down to, of course, there's the entertainment element, but also I think people do learn a little bit when they watch these. And yeah, there's probably elements that they never knew about farming before that even Jeremy Clarkson can talk them through. So it's all of this is very interesting to more people than I think we realise. So um, worth sharing when we can. Websites and blogs. So if you don't have one already, considering a website to be the sort of digital home for your farm and all of your digital marketing efforts. There again now is easier than ever to sort of create websites or commission websites. Historically, we would have had to spend a lot of money and time using really big kind of design agencies and developers to build custom websites that then we couldn't actually access and update or manage ourselves. However, now there's lots of great platforms out there like Squarespace, which is one that I use for my clients, and they allow us to get things up much more quickly, and more importantly, allow the whoever it is that's using it or managing it to do that themselves and make those updates in their own time and keep the website fresh and relevant. So just like that, there's also blogs and newsletters which can be added on, obviously, and they allow us to tell more in-depth stories that maybe don't work on our social media platforms. So again, this is something I do kind of on an ongoing basis for a few of my clients, and just keep their audiences and customers engaged with what it is that they're doing. And lastly, another thing I've done for a few clients is set them up an online shop. So it might be relevant for some, might not be for others, but again, it's much easier than ever to do this, and allows you to sell directly to your customer, cutting out the middleman, and just really having control over what it is that you're putting out there, and what it is that you want to be selling. So in terms of content and what you can share, I think it's important to say that if you do have the time and are interested in sharing more about your farm, not to be put off by the idea that it has to be something that's polished and professional and looks really, really beautiful or reads perfectly. I think nowadays there's so much sponsored content on all of our social media feeds and everywhere really, that you might be scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, and every second post is an advert, and often those adverts are quite high quality and polished. And I think more and more people now are actually kind of just skipping straight past them. They straight away identify that content as an ad. And you'll actually see some of the biggest brands out there, they're now going for a more sort of real life, authentic, natural, candid response, and sort of, yeah, just using a lot of footage that's captured just on your phone, little clips, things that just feel more real and yeah, not so thought out, I suppose. So yeah, visual storytelling can be hugely powerful here. I'm a very visual person anyway, but also most of the platforms we use today are really lend themselves to this. So posting photos and videos of daily life on the farm, whether that's with the animals, sowing, harvest time. Again, being in Scotland, we're so lucky to be in an incredibly beautiful place. So even just sharing, you know, photos of the farm itself, the landscape surrounding you, the weather, the seasons. I know it's something I enjoy looking at whenever I'm on my social media feeds. So I'm sure other people would be interested as well. We already mentioned, but kind of process insights. So sharing a little bit about your products and how they go from field to table or shelf or whatever it is they end up. There might be elements of that that your followers or audience would love to know more about. And these can be documented with, you know, short video clips or pictures, or if words is more your thing, writing up a nice blog post for a website. But yeah, I think people do really like to read and learn about that stuff. Same as with showcasing kind of the end product. So where you're the stuff that you're growing or rearing, whatever it is that you do on your farm, where that ends up, and the connections with yeah, whether it's a distributor or your grain goes to distillery, or the beef ends up in this shop. I think showcasing that is quite interesting to some people as well. And lastly, obvious one, but seasonal updates. I definitely kind of live and move with the seasons. So I think, yeah, our social media feeds, you know, they are changing all the time, and you can see really at the beginning of autumn, everything just, there's a shift in terms of all the visuals, and everything starts to look really autumnal. So of course, farming really lends itself to that. It's a hugely seasonal lifestyle, and the work that you do is very much tied to the seasons. So there might be elements there you want to share with people too. So out with kind of content or in the digital world, there's lots of other things I suppose you can do as well. For a couple of my clients, I also work with them closely on experiences or activities that people can experience in the real world, not just online. And yeah, farming again, there might be elements of that that are possible for you or of interest. So we all know that agritourism is, yeah, growing and has been for a number of years in Scotland, but there might be some things that you've not done before or have kind of thought about. So considering farm tours or even farm stays, if you have that option, those really kind of, yeah, I suppose cater to uh, a lot of people out there that maybe aren't as lucky to live kind of rurally and in the countryside, and can offer that sort of, I suppose, a space out somewhere beautiful. And yeah, also kind of school groups, families, they might be interested in visiting your farm. I know a lot of local farms in Perthshire that do various things with kids that are massively popular. Um, and yeah, seasonal events again, so moving with the seasons and looking at kind of small festivals or even Christmas markets. These just kind of bring your local community together, people from further afield, but ultimately it gets more people to your farm, learning about what you do, and ultimately your product, if that's what you want them to take away. Um, so yeah, if you do manage to get time to kind of do any of this stuff, which I know is hard on top of, yeah, farming. I know a few farmers and it's a hugely demanding job, but it's obviously important to make sure that that time and investment kind of goes somewhere. And so always having in the back of your mind kind of strengthening the reach and making sure that that's always kind of, you're building momentum there. So one way to do that is by collaborating with other local businesses. Again, a few of my clients do a really great job of this, whether it's by hosting events in collaboration with other shops or bakers, or there's a farm that does supper clubs up at their farm. Yeah, one of the cider company, they'll do like specialty releases for specific shops locally. So there's lots of little things that can be explored there that might be of interest. And yeah, I probably mentioned this already, but the likes of markets, festivals, even joint events with other farms or farmers can be quite a nice way to help spread the word. So yeah, if you do go ahead and do any of this, it's important to kind of keep an eye on what's working and what's not, and also staying motivated. Social media especially can be really frustrating at times because they change algorithms every minute of every day, and people question like, why am I bothering doing this work, and things aren't being seen. But I think it can be quite enjoyable, at least for me anyway. I enjoy making content, I enjoy posting things around where I live, and yeah, it might be something that you would enjoy too. But looking at kind of what works can be really helpful. So again, social media has great insight tools along with website analytics. So just kind of keeping an eye on what is performing well and what's resonating with your audience and what's not. And then, yeah, staying inspired is also quite important. So again, it's time, it's effort. So make sure that you celebrate small wins when something does go well. So it might just be a new partnership, or it might just be some nice feedback you've had on a newsletter, but making sure that you kind of celebrate those small things. Also following fellow farmers or farms and producers local to you, keeping an eye on what everyone's doing. I know that I'm constantly looking at people I love and what they do, and that keeps me very inspired. And last but not least, just remembering that marketing is definitely a long game and it takes time. And yeah, not to be disheartened when something doesn't happen overnight, but just to keep at it, and what's the harm in trying? So yeah, I think that's me. So thank you so much. I will let the next person go.
Yeah. So hello. Yeah. So I'm Anya. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk here. So I will, start. Yeah. Just go to the next page, please. Yeah. So I run Great Glen Charcuterie with my husband. As you can hear, I'm not Scottish. So we moved from the Netherlands to Scotland in 2000. And my husband had been offered a job on a small country estate. And part of the job was the wild deer management. So he started experimenting with the deer because the price, was very low around that time. So he wanted to add value and make some product. So that's really how it started. So first making for friends and family, and then they encouraged us to start a business. So in 2003, we started Great Glen Charcuterie, and now we make a range of products which we sell to independent retail and to food service. And we also sell online, and have launched last year, we launched a subscription box service for charcuterie. And we've won many sort of great taste awards. So that's what we do. And what really drives us is sustainably using the amazing wild produce what we've got on our doorstep, which takes me to the next slide. So that's really where we are. So we saw this picture with Kim. So Kim made this picture. So she's made some lovely pictures for us. But I think it really shows who we are. So that's actually where we live. So that gives us a sense of place. And we've got the mountains in the background, Ben Nevis, the Nevis Range. So that's really where we are. And then at the next slide, we'll take you really to the Highlands, in the Highlands where we source our deer from. So we buy venison from the local estates. So it's, we know, you know, the people where we buy them from. So then, as you probably know, there are no natural predators anymore. So the wild deer population has to be managed. And it's a delicious meat, it's very healthy, and that really brings us to the core elements of our brand. So sustainability, environmental, protecting the environment, is a very ethical meat source, and it's part of the history and heritage of the Highlands. So we have actually made a film which we show on our website. We were very lucky. We had a good friend who's a filmmaker, and she made a short film for us. And that really tells the story from taking you in the mountains where the ponies take the deer down, how we make the products. And at the end of the film, we, with our family, come together in the garden eating the charcuterie. And the film is really the sort of the heart of our marketing strategy, what we do. So it takes you to the next slide. So when I started taking on the marketing for the business, I had no experience, and we didn't really have a formal plan. I trained as a primary school teacher. So I guess, you know, telling stories is something I was used to. And we really started sharing what we were up to. And I think over time, we developed a style and a voice. And I think doing it yourself, the marketing, it really brings, you know, an authentic voice. If you use an agency, they can never, it's harder sort of to be real. And it's also creating the emotional connection, which I think is a very big part of you know, connecting with people. And that is sometimes quite difficult, you know, finding a fine line, but what you want to share with people, and sometimes, you know, you want to keep private. But people really appreciate the honesty, and even when you share the hard stuff. For example, my husband has struggled with his health for many years, and he was diagnosed with Lyme's disease not so long ago. And so we've been sharing that with our community, and we've had a really lovely support, and you know, really that has been really incredible. And I think it sort of strengthened our connection with our followers. So being real and honest is very important. But another part of our approach is educating our customers about wild venison, why it's healthy, its health benefits, the positive impact responsible deer management has on the environment, and we share knowledge on why eating wild venison is good. And we're also helping to raise awareness about those issues, and that helps building the recognition for our brands. And another part is inspiring our customers. So we give them ideas on how to use our charcuterie in their own dishes. And I think through all those pillars, that's really hopefully becomes us more than just a brand. And we want to be a source of inspiration and connection with people. And then the next page. That is really, you know, how we tell our story. So we mainly use Instagram and Facebook along with our website and a monthly newsletter to bring people into our world. And our approach is quite simple. It's sharing the real day-to-day aspects of what we do. So we take our followers behind the scenes of our curing and smoking processes. We show them the craftsmanship that goes into each product. So they get a real look at the work what makes our charcuterie what it is, and you know, showing that, and also showing why it is probably a bit more expensive than something you buy in the supermarkets. So, and there's also a lot going behind the scenes. So we try to share that whenever we can, whether it is, you know, how we prepare the products, or making up our orders, and people can get a real look in what we do when we're off to markets or when we do tastings. And another part, telling our story, we really share about our local area. So we talk about the landscape, local towns, and the beautiful scenery. And that gives our followers a real sort of sense of place, and it shows why we are so inspired by the land around us. And then every week we share recipes. So I've started doing a Friday recipe when I share a new recipe, and we share serving ideas for our charcuterie. It's really giving people idea what to do with it. And, you know, hopefully we sort of turn that into sales. And we also share snippets of our life in the Highlands. So that's often becoming a little bit more personal. We might share, you know, things in our garden. We're very lucky to live in an old house with a lovely big garden, which needs a lot of work, but we just show the nice parts and not the really messy parts, you know, sometimes. So that's really what we share when I go on swims, when we go for walks with the children. And it really makes people to get connected to the lifestyle here and the simple rhythm of life what we've got. So over time, this storytelling has caught the attention of journalists, and we've been very lucky to have been featured in magazines and even in books. And it's all part of showing people really who we are, you know, where we're from and what we are about. So then we go to the next page. So, and it's not always easy to balance work and showing up on social media, but I thought I'll share some tips what really helped us to grow our following. So I think we've sort of found a signature style, what's really a recognizable style that really reflects our brand and that creates a cohesive look. So every element in your pictures need to tell the right story. So for us, these are reflected in natural materials, such as our packages. We pack them in brown paper and string. We use Hessian tablecloths, and all those things tell that story of natural, that's really part of the heritage. We use, you know, old plates, lovely old plates, and we also, you know, make sure they sort of come back in different pictures. So I think it's really important, you know, sort of to tell that story that way. And the other thing is really, you know, capturing moments and not just things. So instead of this picture, for instance, you know, we could have had a picture of just a dish, but we made a picture, the plates on the table, there is someone dishing out the food, and it really draws people into the experience. And it's those simple things what are part of telling that story, and people really connect with that. So you could be on the farm, that could be something simple as a pair of well-worn boots at the entrance, you know, at your door, and that tells a story. And trying to find those moments and those things, you know, really that adds an emotional layer to the pictures, what resonates with people. And then to be consistent, so that really builds trust, so people know what to expect. So it's quite important to decide how often you post each week and then really try to stick to it. And what really helped us is creating regular content series. So now I do a Friday recipe, and I can sit down and I can prepare lots in advance for weeks. And then I know, you know, on the Friday that's going out. And we do product spotlights. So it's really easy to plan ahead and share those things. So you could have on your farm, you could have, you know, Meet the Team Mondays, or you could have Animal of the Week. And it's really important to create a rhythm and keep your followers engaged. And also giving. So social media is about connection. It's not just about promotion. So you still want to highlight your products and the service you sell, but make sure your posts offer value to your followers. So it's whether it's inspirational, it's tips, it's entertainment. And if there's too much sales focused content, that really turns people off, so keep the main focus on sharing, and then with the occasional post mentioning product for sale, if that's what you do. And then definitely sharing the love. So engage with and support other local businesses on your post. You can tag them and link them to nearby places to visit, or sharing a favorite local cafe. That really helps to build community and mutual support. And then also don't forget to comment on others' posts too. So you're building connections, and building connections and relationships goes a long way in social media. And also don't forget to reply if anyone leaves a comment on any of your posts. Reply and as soon as you can. That's very important for that conversation going. So these are just a few items I really wanted to share with you. I could go on forever as there is so much to talk about. But if you want to reach out to us, so if you go to the next page now, so please, give us a follow, or get in touch. I'm always happy to chat to anyone if anyone, wants to have a chat.
So if I could have the next slide, please, Sarah, that would be great. So I've been asked, as I said, to talk about provenance, and provenance can be defined as a crafted artisan product. It might be an authentic product. We've heard a lot about that already today. It might be a heritage product. It might be a place. But whatever it is, it's always linked to quality. It's always linked to great taste, and it's always linked to sustainability. And local now, when people in Scotland are talking about local food, 15 years ago, local in Scotland meant it was Scottish, but now it's really local. Local is now more region than Scotland, and that's because the growth and appreciation of local food and drink, and local food tourism, agritourism type experience has all grown, as we've already heard, over the last few years. That said, price is always really important. So you've already gone ahead to the next slide, so thank you very much, Sarah. Scotland Food Drink launched these brand logos in September, what became, it used to be Scotland Food and Drink Fortnight. It became a sort of celebration across the whole of September. And I think it's really important because they're calling those the new naturally Scottish logos, and it's something everybody should really be involved in. I'm not going to read the slide word for word, but it's talking there about exceptional produce. It's talking about the essence of what it means to be Scottish. It's talking about provenance and place and people and heritage and sustainable and innovation. And if you're a farmer, a land manager, you've just got a business link to the land, you're way ahead already in terms of those elements of your product. Can we move to the next slide, please, Sarah? So why is provenance important? Well, it's really important, and because 58% of Scottish consumers rate food provenance as something that's really important to them. So there's a growing consumer demand. So think about in your marketplace, can you use this to trade on? The demand for provenance is higher amongst households with 25 to 54-year age groups, younger children, and also sort of those with a little bit more disposable income. Rural residents rate provenance more important than city dwellers, and obviously it's quite it's the financially comfortable that rate highly in this space. But there's a lot of those people around. So provenance provides an opportunity really to build trust in your brand. We've heard already about using your farm as a destination, as a brand, as a sort of centre from which you can build your story. We've heard how Antje and her family have built their business around the provenance of where they are. So this demand for provenance is really important, and you can build around that. In a pressurised economy, the demand and the support for local businesses is really important and considered valuable because it's supporting the local economy. And that's really important in rural Scotland, incredibly important. Provenance is intertwined with the demand for sustainability. So can it be local? So it's not travelling from across the world. I know sustainability is more than that, but that's important. Good business ethics. critically important. Both our presenters tonight have talked about being honest, and that's hugely important. This also impacts on tourism choices. So if we can come to the next slide, please, Sarah. So in terms of sustainability, food trends such as localism, eco-friendly practices and trusts are all really being driven by both climate and geopolitical uncertainty. Today's consumers, particularly Generation Z, so that's my children's generation, so those born between 97 and 2012, they're really serious about sustainability. And why? Because they have grown up facing the realities of climate change. They are really interested in supporting authentic, purposeful, value-led brands. So they're looking for a real deep sustainability, and a sustainability of business invests in people and planetary restoration. So they're caring the high quality, important ethics. So sustainable sourcing comes with provenance. It's now critical for brand success in that generation. And that generation will be the driving force going forward in terms of money, in terms of expense. So, you know, when you are thinking about building your business, you need to think about what your consumers, which consumer set are you going for, and what's important to them. And sustainability comes in all shapes and sizes, and businesses are keen to highlight the credentials. And there's lots of examples out there of businesses that are really building on their doing more good rather than doing less harm. People are also looking to the past for reliable wisdom. They're learning from heritage, earth-friendly farming, picking, pickling, preserving, fermenting, simple, natural, healthier. And Ansha talked about that being part of your story. So is this something that chimes with your business? You know, climate change, which is with us to stay, has increased consumer interest in native, heritage, and indigenous products. Now, this next slide, I've just done some examples there, and there's hyperlinks there to some businesses that, you know, I don't think any of them are actually based in Scotland. I've got some Ballindarloch Farm's a great example of one that's done something very similar to this in Scotland. But there's a whole new generation of makers blossomed post-pandemic. And these are people that they've recognised the value of homemade. They've recognised the value of linking to farm. They've recognised the value of linking to my overproductive kitchen garden, and they've created brands around the recognition that consumers are really keen to link back to the spirit of the farm, the homemade, the homegrown, the sort of family business. So I'll leave you to look at your own in your own time about those businesses. But what struck me about those businesses is the way there are so many similarities drawing on the demands of consumer interest today. So in terms of the next slide, please, Sarah, it's about creating products and enterprises with values that appeal to today and tomorrow's consumer. So eco-actives is how Kantar describes people really interested in the eco quality of products, and they are 23% of our Scottish population. They spend 2.7 billion on fast-moving consumer goods. That's a lot of money, you know. So this is a really important part of any future brand development, and it's that appeal of natural products. It links to sustainability. 46% of global consumers are looking for natural products. Why? Because they link them to health. They link them to good environmental or looking after the environment. That could be around guilt-free consumption, having a positive impact on the planet, and as I said before, a product that's doing more good rather than less bad. And some of that is around alleviating social guilt. But again, 87% of that Generation Z want businesses to make their ethics clear. You know, the ethics of the business and the values the business stands for are critical, and that's a huge part when you're building a business or an enterprise, whether it be on farm or elsewhere. Next slide, please, Sarah. In terms of tourism, and this was touched on before by Kim, Scotland's food tourism strategy was launched when it was launched. I haven't put a picture of it up there. £995 million is spent on eating and drinking in Scotland when people were holidaying in Scotland. 2/3 of that is spent by UK consumers, and 1/3 of that is spent by international visitors. More recent information shows us that from the United States, 15% of the people coming to Scotland from the United States are coming to Scotland because of food and drink. 46% of them take part in at least one food and drink experience On-farm agritourism experiences, rural food tourism experiences, hugely grown and a huge opportunity. So think about things like that when you're thinking about how you develop and what you develop and how you target your market. Now, the pandemic increased our interest in local, it increased interest in artisanal and production methods and provenance. And that also facilitates, as I said before, that link back to history, heritage and culture. So are there things around your farm, in your space, in your region, in your locality? Are there things that you can link your story to? And Kim mentioned story before, and I'll be mentioning that again in a couple of slides. So I think these things, these elements are really, really important and can help you build a really good and rounded story. If we move on to the next slide, I think Kim touched on this as well. Consumers share more information now than ever before because it's so easy to do it. They expect brands to share their whole story. They know the product story before they purchase, because guess what? They've been online, they've looked at it, they've seen what it does, and it makes their whole interwoven experience with a brand or a place so much more deep. It helps fully integrate those consumers with the brand. And, you know, it also means there's been a growth in digital tracing technology. So in terms of knowing and being able to trace where products come from. So that honesty element, that sort of behind the scenes, being open and having your good values and strong ethics really comes into play there. We look to the next slide, please. So I said I'd mention a little bit about story, and I think really from what we've heard, it's emphasised the value of provenance. I think it's important to think, how can you fit that into your story? And actually, what is your story? So when you're thinking about provenance, think about the provenance of products, the provenance of local heritage, of local landscape, the sustainability that surrounds what you're doing, and your business values. And a good story is always authentic, it's creative, it makes an emotional and personal connection. And Antje talked about that personal connection. That's so, so strong and important. It inspires action. You know, telling the story is one thing, but getting people to want to buy the product, creating that hook, that ask is really important. And it takes an audience on a journey with the brand. So storytelling can definitely increase your revenue if you get it right. And it's a thing, how do you reach your target market? How can you bring that power of provenance and that story to your market and your business? I'm going to end on that question because my final slide is just saying we'll open up to any questions, but you can get me on LinkedIn, or indeed I work alongside Sarah, so you can always get me through SAC Consulting. Thank you.